Hey, Cyber Safe families. Do you ever feel like you're on an emotional roller coaster every day? That emotion's just dragging you through the day. You're doing things, you're just responding with emotion instead of being able to control yourself. Do you have to go talk to your child at the end of the day and apologize to them, maybe a coworker? Well, today we're going to be talking about how to fix those things. And we're going to be talking to Mike Gillette, aka the Mind Boss. He's a former paratrooper, he's a SWAT commander, he's in the Martial Arts Hall of Fame, and he is a record breaking strongman. Now, while he's very physical in what he does, he also knows that what separates the good from the elite is really the mindset. And so today we're talking about how he teaches mindset and how to have a better mindset to even people like us, parents like us, so we can really enjoy life better. We can be better parents. We can help our children regulate their emotions as well. And so check out this video we did with him. And at the end of this, he's going to give you a simple 5-step part, little homework assignment that you can help yourself be a better parent and regulate your emotions and control your mind better, just in 5 steps, 1 time a day. For parents to kind of get a grasp of what we're talking about, people talk about training and think about physical training. Is there a similarity between kind of physical training and your kind of mental training?
That's a great question, and I absolutely think there is, and that's usually the way that I try to frame it, because when we're talking about mindset, well, what is that? We can't reach out and grab it. It's kind of a nebulous idea, whereas we all sort of understand the mechanics of going to the gym and increasing our cardiovascular capability or our ability to manifest physical strength, and that seems like sort of an intuitive process. I do more of this, I get better at doing that thing. Well, the way that we train mental skills is much the same way. It takes first an accepting of the premise that it can be done. And that's actually something that a lot of people struggle with, because we're talking about how people think. We're talking about the way they feel about things, themselves, the world, and so on. And a lot of people feel captive to how things are. It's never been explained to them, or maybe not convincingly, that how you experience the world right now can be, if you put in the work and you have a plan to follow, you can change that. You can, if you are somebody who, to use the expression, has low self-esteem, we'll say, or somebody who's more anxious or nervous, a little insecure. Well, that can be changed, so long as you accept the premise that it's changeable. And there are some people who just won't. No, I am how I am. They'll overreact to something, and then someone else will call them on that, and they'll say, well, I just can't help it. This is the way I am. You know me, I flop.
I was born this way. Yeah.
I've got a temper. It's like, okay, so basically you are resigning yourself to this, or maybe you sense on some level that this is changeable, but it sounds like a lot of work, so forget it.
Yeah.
So,
I think that's a big point right there. What I was thinking of is, I think everyone understands it's changeable, but how much work are they willing to put in to change it?
exactly. Yeah, exactly. And one of the ways that we can sort of, soften the the idea that, man, this is going to be hard, is by, presenting a plan that, hey, that seems viable. I think I could do that. I could invest a few minutes every day into making my life easier for myself and for those around me. But you have to at least be open to that idea to start with, and then there has to be some sort of process. Now, the process does not have to be complex. It can be, but that's for those people who want that, who are really looking to do amazing substantive things in their lives. But for the average person who maybe feels like, I don't know, I think I'm just kind of a negative person, I'd like to be able to do something about that. Well, there's some pretty simple things that one can do, but it's all about consistency. The reason that mindset's a little bit tricky is that I can explain the benefits of having a positive attitude, whatever that might mean to you. And you're like, okay, yeah, that sounds good. And because you understand what I just said and you've processed it in the intellectual domain, and well, your mind exists also in the mental domain, it kind of makes it feel as though, okay, got it, thanks, Mike, I'm moving on. It's like, no, you don't have it. If I show you how to do a push-up, let's assume that somebody doesn't know what that is. You can't just see it. And it's like, yeah, interesting, Mike, thank you. Now I'm in shape. No, that's not how it works.
Or,
But
oh
because
no,
yeah,
I
we
was
try
hoping it
to
would.
do things mentally, so it kind of feels like, okay, I got it. It's like you don't have it. I often say the answer is not the answer. The answer is the application of the answer. And you could substitute a word like solution. It's the same thing. But yes, to your point, these things are trainable. And because they're trainable, they're sort of trackable, meaning that we can sort of, you know, monitor our progress as we go. Now, we can't typically monitor that progress mathematically because we're talking about how we think and how things feel, but we can sort of experientially or anecdotally say, well, 6 months ago, things felt like this. And I started doing some things, and now it's 6 months later, and now they feel like this, and that feels better. So that's progress.
Yes.
There's some way that we can kind of look back over our shoulder. It's like, yeah, I'm better than I was.
Yeah, I can give you a real life example. Actually, just right before we got on here, my wife's out of town today. We have 5 kids and we homeschool, so we've been homeschooling this morning, breakfast and lunch, and we've come to the office and their computer wasn't working for them to be watching something while we have this conversation. And as soon as we leave here, we're heading out to karate and a couple other things we have to do. And so the stress, I think, of everyday life for parents is, I feel it as much as anyone else watching this. And, I told you before we started that, last probably year or so, we've really been working looking into the mindset things. How do you optimize what you're doing, and how do you kind of control your emotions and live a happier life. And so something, I have your course. And so I went into, I think it's called the visual mind. And so they're over there, and you didn't jump on yet. And so it just took about 2 minutes, went through that process and calmed down. Stress left, and I'm ready to talk to you. And that's I think such a huge, I mean, it's a small thing, like took 2 minutes, but
Yeah,
it just
yeah.
changed the mindset for the rest of my day. And so, better father, better husband, better person you meet on the street. What you're doing absolutely works, and I do appreciate what you're doing. So that's kind of one of the big benefits, I think, with what parents can achieve when they are working on their mindset. But what are some other benefits parents can have?
Well, in addition to, and thanks for that example. I think that's a really good one, particularly in terms of there's sort of two broad ways we can look at this, and the first one is sort of short term. Okay, right now I'm just it's one of those days, and I'm kind of angsty, and I'm ready to break stuff. Is there a way to kind of maybe mitigate that? And yes, there is, and you give a good example of that. But there's also sort of the longer term, or perhaps the bigger picture benefits of doing this kind of work, and that really has to do with what I consider sort of a worldview approach. How do you see yourself? And I've kind of used these words already. How do you see yourself operating within the world? And are you somebody who can make things happen? Or are you somebody things just sort of happen to you? Now, sometimes we all kind of feel like, man, stuff is happening to us. All it takes is a letter in the mail from the IRS, and you kind of feel like things are happening to you. That might make
Hmm.
anyone feel a little bit powerless in that
Absolutely.
moment. But in general, how do we feel about things? How do we feel about our ability to affect positive change? Not over the world, but within the world around us, our little corner of the world. Do you believe that you have the ability to make that space a little bit better? Can you make the world a little bit better for the people who are important to you, the people you are close to? And that type of attitude is completely built around your mindset. When you look out in the world, do you see problems, or do you see potential solutions? Is it obstacles out there or opportunities? Which sounds a bit kind of fluffy, and okay, Mike's talking about is the glass half empty, half full. Well, I don't know who came up with that expression. I don't know that anyone does, but it does point to a general orientation, a mental orientation. And I think that the more that people, I would say, experiment with, some of the very basic exercises that you were sort of alluding to, because they're fairly brief, they're not complex at all. Even though some of them were originally like buried in sort of esoteric belief systems, which I think a lot of people gravitate to because it just seems cool. I have to sit a certain way and have this sort of music playing in the background. It's like, okay, whatever. I was introduced to a lot of these things back, in either the military or tactical law enforcement setting. So for me, it all has to be very practical. I'm not a big fan of, cosmic, mystical things. But the more that you practice being in charge of yourself, the better you get at being in charge of yourself. Now, that may sound sort of simple and self-evident, but it's one of those things that if we practice it, we realize, okay, let's think of our minds, as basically, everything that happens from the neck up. Let's think of that space as real estate, and let's think of that real estate as real estate that you are in charge of. You need to manage it, and what it feels like not to manage it well, because we've all been there.
Oh yeah,
But
absolutely.
when you have had a day full of surprises, because life is dynamic, and you have a lot of children, and that can make life especially dynamic. No one day is exactly like any other. So you've got to be a little bit agile mentally. So when you've handled a day that had plenty of variables, and you've handled it reasonably well, you feel pretty good about that, because it's like, ordinarily this would have made me do that, and that would have made me do this other thing, but I paused, I took a breath, I did whatever. I didn't say what I wanted to say in that moment. I waited. And then, because I waited a few minutes later, I said something that was a lot more productive to say and not just therapeutic to say. All of that is really manifestations, and they're simple ones, of a mindset that is being built on, is being developed or honed, rather than just sort of, I surrender to the whims of my emotions, and I'm just kind of drug about the world by them. They just sort of knock me around, and sometimes I'm pleasant, but sometimes, I'm a loud, cranky jerk.
Yeah,
Well,
you never know who you're going to get.
yeah, and nobody likes that feeling. I mean, you remember from your days in law enforcement, when you would deal with a situation where somebody was genuinely freaking out. The person who was freaking out didn't usually like that fact, but some people genuinely felt helpless in those moments. I don't have the resources, or I was just never told that this is something that I can have any sort of positive impact over. So here it comes, and now it's happening to everybody.
Oh,
And that's
absolutely.
just not a good feeling. So the more that we can start to experience sort of incremental success, that's a big deal. And as parents in particular, if you've never been at a stage in your life where you've felt like you have potential success in store in terms of resolving difficult moments better, then that's what you're teaching your kids. Oh, when bad things happen, you have, carte blanche to be a jerk, to
Yep.
just, be completely self-centered, impulsive, and that's serving no one ultimately.
And I,
So,
and I think every parent's been there where they've felt that, I did not handle that right, and
right.
when what do my kids just see, and what I've got to
Hmm.
deal with because of that, and now you got to handle that conversation with them. But for a
Yeah.
parent who's kind of wanting to move from that chaos to the calm, to be that model for their kids, is there kind of a starting point, or kind of something that how they can kind of start that down that path?
Well, I prescribe for a variety of reasons and in a variety of contexts, a very simple activity, and I'll share that because it points to sort of a larger reality. One of the things that can get in our way, well, it's one thing for Mike to say all of these things and make it seem so easy, but when things start to break off and life gets weird, man, that's a whole nother situation. And a lot of the way that we respond to situations has to do with sort of innate neurological wiring. So the way that I look at this is if you've gone through life feeling like you don't want to be a negative person, but you feel like you're a negative person, you feel a little bit helpless. And one of the examples I would give a person is, okay, let's say it's a typical day. And at the end of the typical day, I gave you an unusual homework assignment. You took out a piece of paper and you wrote 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on one side of the paper and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the other side of the paper. And then I said, okay, just take a few moments and think about this particular day and what might have happened during that typical day, and sort of write down 5 things that happened that you feel good about. And then write a list of 5 things that happened during that day that you don't feel good about. Which list is easier to write? Now, if you're not trying to impress me with, I'm going to make Mike think I have a super rosy outlook. Oh, it's the positive. No, it's not. It's not easier for anybody. The easy list is, what are the 5 things that happened today that you are not happy about? Boom, 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 boom. Those come to mind right away. How long does it take to write the list of 5 things? You may never get done. You may not be able to come up with more than 3. Now, people will look at that and say, yeah, I see what you mean, Mike. I guess we all suck. I guess we're all negative. It's like, no, that's not what that is. We are wired to survive as a species. Once upon a time, before, we all lived in homes and went to the store to buy food, life was even more dynamic and dangerous. Drink the wrong water, die. Eat the wrong, fruit off a tree, die. You're not fast enough trying to catch an animal to eat, the animal eats you. You have a personality conflict with someone from a different tribe than you die. The world could kill you in all kinds of different ways once upon a time. We don't live in that world now, but we are still wired for survival, which simply means that our minds are constantly looking for problems to solve. We're not negative, but we are wired to solve problems, which is why if you ever wake up at 3 in the morning and you are tossing and turning and can't go back to sleep, does your mind think of pleasant things that happened or things that need to be done, things that are unfixable? It's trying to solve problems. In that moment, your mind is actually trying to help you. It's just not it's not helpful in the way that we would like it to be. Our minds are really good at pointing out things that are not pleasant to think about. It's trying to keep us alive. So the assignment that I will give people is to sort of recalibrate the things that we focus on. There's this thing in our minds. It's called the reticular activation system, or RAS, and that's just a fancy term for what are the things that we focus on day to day. So here's an example of the RAS at work. You just bought a new car. Suddenly, as you're out driving your new car, you notice that, has everybody just bought this car? Because I'm seeing it everywhere. You go to the mall, you buy a new outfit, suddenly you see that outfit everywhere. Well, it was always there, but now suddenly, because you have a reason to notice it, it's sort of been directed, your attentional lens is kind of focused on that particular thing. So, and everybody can come up with an example of that. So the things that we sort of default to normally, as far as the things that we notice, are things that are potential problems. Well, potential problems seem kind of negative. So what I do is I say, okay, so that hypothetical assignment with the 2 lists, we'll scrap the 1 list. You don't need any help remembering negative things, because 6 months from now, you may be able to remember some of the negative things that happened today, but I guarantee you 6 months from now, you would never remember the positive things. Why? Well, we assume positive things should happen, and negative things are just, an unpleasant byproduct of day-to-day life. So here's what we do. At the end of every day, you make a list. It can be on your phone. It can be on a little pad of paper. It's whatever. So 5 things that happened that you can feel good about. Now, they can't be things like, I saw the sunrise. It was beautiful. Well, that's great, but that's not your job. Someone else has that job. Okay. Something that you had a connection to. So like if I'm talking to students, maybe you did well in a test. Well, but maybe you didn't. Well, maybe you prepared hard for the test, or maybe you went into the test with as positive an attitude as you could muster in the circumstances, because this is a really hard class for you. So what happens is, if we do this consistently, and you have to do it consistently, and this is another one of those things, oh, I get it. Just think about things that you're happy about, Mike. I've got it. I'm not going to do the push-ups. No, you have to do the metaphorical push-ups. You make that list every day. And what it does is, so our attention is over here. Let's just say this is the red zone. This is where problems live. And we can, oh, something good happened, but boom, the default is right back here. Okay, this is sort of where the gauges go all by themselves. Well, if we make a discipline of looking for things that we can feel good about in some way, that what happens is we start to recalibrate this dial. And no, this isn't a real dial. So over time, we are training ourselves to notice the things that are positive or helpful, rather than the things that just kind of feel like, overbearing obstacles and problems. It takes practice, but it's about the simplest way I know to sort of introduce this whole idea that, given time and given consistent effort, you can actually start to retrain how you see yourself, how you see the world. And after you do this, as simple as that sounds, the results are remarkable. I've received letters from athletes that I've worked with. Sometimes I met them one day, we talked about some concepts, I suggested this activity, and never saw them again. There's one letter that I read frequently, came from a college softball player who talked about how it changed her grades, it changed her athletic performance, it changed her relationship with her parents, it literally changed her life. 5 things every day, but she was willing to put in the time and do it, and the results were amazing.
Excellent. So Cyber Safe Families, 5 things every day can change your life. And so if a parent's like, all right, I'm trying these 5 things and it's going well, and I want to go kind of deeper with you, how do they find out more about what you do, and how do they connect with you?
Well, there's the easy ways to do that. I have a lot of content online, particularly via YouTube and my Facebook business page, where I post a lot of essays and a lot of videos, which are sort of examples of the things that I teach, but they're not necessarily the methodologies themselves. I mean, I've got online courses that can be found at MindBoss.Academy. And for people who have a real interest in sort of going above and beyond. So it's kind of starts with the product that you mentioned, which is the collection of exercises, which is really a mental toolbox. And then from there, it goes on to addressing our pre-existing beliefs about ourselves, about the world, sort of getting to things at a subconscious level. And then there's a membership group where every week there's basically a new learning module, and those take place in real time and so forth. So the thing about all of those is none of it's complicated. It's all what I would refer to as non-denominational. You don't have to be, an executive or an athlete. You can be a high school student, you can be a soccer mom. The material is designed to sort of be readily understandable, just like the things that we're talking about here. We're not talking about anything that's inherently complex or difficult to understand. It's just about having sort of a healthy curiosity about the topic and wanting to explore it a little bit.
Awesome. And I'll grab the links off your YouTube and Facebook and drop them in the comments here, so we can have those for you. Well, Mike, I appreciate you coming on, and definitely, I'm sure we could talk for a few hours about swapping stories and everything, but I know you're busy and we'll let you go, but I definitely like to have you back at some point.
Well, my pleasure. I really appreciate what you're doing. I think it's very important.